I am an expert in a very niche field, so I got asked over and over to speak, and the events that I was asked to speak at, the audiences got bigger and bigger.
I want you to think back to the very first time that you were hired to a job into financial services. And I want you to think of the top 3 factors that contributed to you getting hired into that job. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to think, and you have to come up with something because I'm going to make you share with your neighbor.
The thing that I really enjoy is bringing a more engaging experience to the audience. I don't just talk at people.
So when I had the opportunity to interview as the executive assistant to the CEO of a BD RIA hybrid, I took it. I didn't have any financial services experience. She offered me a job on the spot, and I took a leap and took the job. I was in so far over my head, I didn't even know that equity and stock were the same thing. It was bad. But I asked a lot of questions. I was online on Investopedia a lot. I learned quickly. I got my footing, and I got more responsibility because I did well there. More and more responsibility. I became VP. I eventually reorganized every single department in the firm and then became Chief Operating Officer. I spent 5 years doing that. And then when the CEO left, I threw my hat in the ring for that role, and I got it. And I was hired into the role, the same one that hired me, which was just an amazing moment. It's a remarkable career story, right? A story of drive, determination, becoming one of the few women executives in the field, and learning on the job. It is a great story. It's all those things. And also, it's a story of privilege. I did well on my own, but just getting the opportunity was what got me started. And while that may seem unremarkable, introductions are very common in our industry, it's really not, because that's what privilege is. It grants you access without credentials. It lets a person like me with no experience go in and work at a financial services firm. And that privilege spans back generations. Those are my 3 factors. My dad was in the business. I had this university degree that totally covered for my lack of skills in this area and my ability to appear professional. And all those things may seem, kind of standard for financial services, but I just want to stop and think about that for a moment, because to what extent do most Americans have access to these 3 factors? And how about to yours? To what extent do most Americans have the factors that got each of us our foot in the door?
I have not always loved public speaking. I remember the first time that I spoke in public for work, I was reading from my notes, and shaking. But I love it now.
And so that's just an exercise to open our eyes and think for a moment. And while our eyes are open, I want you to look around the room and look around your table. And I want you to notice who's here, and I want to notice who's not here. And what I mean by that is, why do we have so few Latinas in this room? So few Black women? Why are there hardly any Indigenous folks in our community? There are very few people of color in our community in relation to the American population. And what that means is we're missing a big piece, and we need all of those perspectives at our table to be able to solve the problems that we're working on. So this right here is my next-gen message. My generation wants equity, inclusion, and justice centered in all we do, and we want your help. This message is not just for the next-gen folks in the room. This message is for everybody, because to make an inclusive community, there's no easy button. It requires action on everybody's part, one person at a time, one action at a time. And so I'm going to ask you to consider some changes in 2 key areas. Your investing practices, which we'll start with, and your firm and work life. So I write this newsletter. It covers a variety of different topics every week. And the weeks that I write about the S part of ESG, about race, about immigration, those are the weeks that I get my high unsubscribe rates. And so what that tells me is that folks in our community who've signed up for an ESG content are all in for the E. And we're all in for the G. And we're super uncomfortable thinking about the S. And I want to change that. I know we all care about diversity and inclusion, and we need to lead by example. I want you to notice who's not at the table, and then figure out how to bring their perspective to the table, or even better, bring them to the table, bring their voice. I want you to expand your circle. And here, I'm mostly talking to the white folks in the room. If everybody you listen to, whose opinions you value, the people you talk to every day, if they're mostly white, I'm going to ask you to intentionally expand your circle. Follow people of color on social media. Reach out and expand your circle so that you're getting more perspectives in your life. And talk about race. I'm not going to ask you to get comfortable because it's never comfortable. I'm uncomfortable right now talking about it, okay? But we can't solve an issue without being able to talk frankly about it, so get used to talking about race. And about the table, when I say diversity, I'm not trying to take anything away from the white men in the room. I don't want to take away your seat at the table. What I want, and what my generation wants, is to build a bigger table, a table that welcomes everyone. So I'm asking for your help. Let's build a bigger table together. Thank you.